Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Neal Ronaghan of Nintendo World Report and Nadia Oxford of US Gamer to give our post-review thoughts on Octopath Traveler. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we've all played a ton of Octopath at this point. The game is surprisingly lengthy. I did not expect that going into this game, and ended up really enjoying it. But before we get started with our guest post-review thoughts, what did you guys end up thinking about the game going into it, and how did that end up reflecting your opinion once you actually started playing it and finished the game? Let's start with you, Nadia.
Well, as you say, it was a lot longer than I thought it would be, because I figured, okay, this is an RPG that's clearly based on classic 16-bit RPGs, which at best were like, 30, 40 hours back in the day, and I'm kind of hitting hour 40 when I was reviewing the game. I'm like, I am nowhere near done. This is not exactly very 16-bitish of this game, is it? But overall, I really, really ended up enjoying myself, so I can't really say I dreaded or any part of the game or felt like it was dragging on for too long, even though I still do think that it is best enjoyed in small samples, kind of small sips, as it were, as I put it in my review for US Gamer. I had the feeling the game was kind of developed with that in mind, that kind of, stop for a minute, play this chapter, go on with your life, come back to this when you have a chance. And if you play it like that, which I did, I find it really extends your enjoyment of the game. So I came out of the review giving it a 4 out of 5, and I still stand by that. I think that's a really good score for the game.
Did you feel the same way, Neal?
More or less. I was super hyped for this game. I really enjoyed the Bravely Default and Bravely Second games that the masterminds behind this game, what they worked on before. Mm-hmm. And just seeing that initial trailer during the Switch reveal and then playing that demo that came out last year. And then just as we learned more and more about the world and heard the music and saw the graphics and saw the combat system and everything, it seemed like it was going to be this incredible throwback RPG. And it, in a way, it kind of wasn't that, because it had this weirder structure, the kind of bite-sized chapter structure where you don't really have a group of disparate travelers coming together to save the world, so to speak. They're just kind of going about their own lives and going on their own quests, which was kind of a little jarring at first, but then as I kind of settled into the rhythm of the game and accepted it as more, not necessarily as a throwback to the 90s games, or as the 90s JRPGs, but just as its own weird thing that takes inspiration from those older games, but also carves its own Octopath, if you will. With just, like, it, I haven't really played too many games like this. Like, I definitely have, maybe some influences from, I know, like, what was that, Saga Unlimited? Is that the one that people seem to call to mind with this?
I think Seventh Saga as well.
Yeah, and I think, I like, there's definitely games that feel more like this, the different stories of each character. There's definitely games that kind of evoke that more, but it's not your Final Fantasy games, it's not your Dragon Quest games. Although maybe it is like Dragon Quest, because there's a lot of vignettes, and I feel like that colored a lot of Dragon Quest games. But it all worked for me, and that was on the back of the combat, which I think is probably the best part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It did take me a while to really appreciate how deep the combat is. I think once I got the secondary jobs, I was really starting to have a lot of fun with the combat. And then you open up the third jobs if you have that the gumption, which is not easy, but if you do it, oh my god, you have beaten the game. Congratulations.
Well, everything except for the final dungeon boss, which, we'll get into that later. But, I completely agree with you guys. You go in with this certain expectation after seeing the trailer, playing the demo. It's like, okay, you're getting a sense of what this might be like. And there's been games that's done the whole multiple characters thing and going through each of their stories, but usually they're completely separate. It's like, okay, here's one shorter playthrough of this character, one shorter playthrough of this character, and maybe they all come together for one complete story. And Octopath never really does that. Yeah, you do have that final dungeon where the story, you see the connections between the stories, but that's not the focal point. It really is just each character going through their own sort of story arc. It's a more of a collection of short stories and tales rather than one complete saga. It's just like, hey, this is stories that takes place on this continent, 8 exceptional people coming together and ostensibly helping each other out, even though they really don't interact that much. And I think that's the part that throws people off the most, is the fact that it just doesn't have that camaraderie you're used to within other RPGs, and that does develop as you get further into the game and you see those vignettes, but it almost feels a little too little too late a lot of the time.
I really kind of did appreciate the way the vignettes were and the travel banter, quote unquote, as it was called. I'm still kind of discovering new conversations as I head into taverns and stuff like that, and seeing that, you know, they're talking to each other about, you know, their lives and their whatever. And, you know, you do actually have Ophelia and Hannet, who are kind of a couple, which I thought was really, really cute.
I like that a lot too.
Yeah. The way I compared it in my review, if you forgive me for kind of citing my own work here, but I said Octopath Traveler reminds me of a room full of, like, well-behaved cats, in that the characters give each other, you know, plenty of space, but they come together respectfully to groom each other once in a while.
That's a pretty apt description, I'd say.
Yeah.
A little out there, but it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because I wish I liked the plots of each chapter, or each character, rather. I wish I liked the plots of each of them a lot more, because they did have more twists than I think I initially thought they would, but they still kind of followed pretty predictable paths, with a few exceptions. Like, I mean, Primrose is a standout story. I liked Hannet a lot as well, but I think that's more because that was who I started with.
Yeah, she was mine too.
That's so weird that all three of us started with Hannet.
Did we all start with Hannet?
Yeah.
We saw the snow leopard, and that was it.
Where did we all go second?
I went to Therion.
I went to Ophelia.
Oh, I think I might have gone to Therion as well.
All right, so I differ. I guess I went east to Ophelia.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to Ophelia next. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That means Derek's the weirdo.
I am the weirdo, but it kind of worked out because Therion's very useful for opening up those purple chests, so I was really happy really quick.
Therion and Tressa were the two characters that I would kind of explore with, because Tressa would get you all that money, and then Therion would be able to steal from people and also unlock those treasure chests.
Yeah. Here's what I want to know. Is Tressa stealing off dead bodies? There's a meme going around saying that she's stealing off dead bodies when it says Tressa found however much money off an unfortunate soul. And it's like, I always figured, oh, someone dropped the money. That's fine. But Twitter's going on about how she's stealing from dead bodies. I'm like, what? Is there a dead body just lying there in town that she's stealing from?
If you think it's a noble, I mean, because, yeah, she's supposed to not be a rogue, so it's not like she's stealing them from people. So that means she would be finding them, but on unfortunate souls, I guess, yeah. That means they're dead people. That kind of adds up.
Yeah, I just sort of interpreted like, hey, this poor guy who lost his wallet and she found it. Well, he's obviously not around, so this unfortunate soul, I got his money now.
It's funny that we brought up stories, too, and who we like and who we don't like, because it's funny, I've had people tell me, oh, such and such a story is shallow, but such and such is really good, and it's like, I find my answers are often quite different from other people's. Like, I did like Primrose's story, what happened at the very end with the theater. Like, I actually really love some of the fourth chapter setups for some of the characters, because you kind of have that creepy sort of red-skied sunset town, and the music that sounds all foreboding and stuff like that, and it really does feel like it's coming to a climax. But it's like, I love Elfin's story, and I think I'm alone in that, because everyone's just like...
I was just looking up your article, because I was trying to think. I was like, I know there was some character that Nadia wrote an article about that I was kind of like, yes. I don't know about that, because well, I will say, I think Alfin's story might, at least for me, and if I recall from reading your article, you liked it from the get-go. I think his story starts off weak, but ends stronger.
Yeah, it does start off a little weak, I will admit. And at first, my whole thing with him was, oh, I like the way he's a warm guy. He wants to do good. And like I said, in this kind of climate, I think that's kind of nice to have a character like that. But he has that big twist by the third chapter, which is like, wow, that's I kind of feel this dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really odd. Like, I was sort of used to all the really dark stuff to be limited to Primrose's story, and all of a sudden that chapter happened, and it was like, oh my. And Alfin did end up becoming my second favorite story of the game. It was just very different, very personal, and I liked how he just had this thing to overcome and realized, no, I do want to do this. I'm all about this, and it felt good. It was reaffirming, and especially when you just learn more about the characters. And I like how once you complete chapters, key characters from those stories will have their own side quests, and you can learn more about them and get even more context. Like, I like games that build up their side cast through the use of side quests, and Octopath is really effective at that.
Yeah, it's a very dense game.
That's why I think that the review process for this game might have been like it's always weird because we have a time crunch. So a game like Octopath is a game that I think if you just rock through the critical path and you're just doing, going from chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter, I think you're kind of doing it wrong.
Yes.
Because the game works best, and I wish I wasn't at a point where I had to like binge through the back half of the game to hit embargo.
Yeah.
But I was playing it through the first 2 chapters very kind of like lethargically and just kind of exploring and wandering around, and I was like, oh, I can find these second job classes. Maybe I'll try to tackle this secret dungeon here. I'll try to do all these side quests that are all in the towns. And as I got to the 3rd and 4th chapter and I was staring down the barrel of a deadline, I was like, okay, the side quests are going to have to wait.
Time to wrap this up.
I've gone back after the review embargo, and I've been kind of picking it up here or there, and I'm just like, oh, I'll go work at some of these side quests. And I kind of like the game more as I'm going through the side quests because they really do color in the whole world. And while there isn't any big, grand, overarching story, with the exception of that final dungeon, which I actually haven't done much other than like look at,
Neither have I.
There's so much interconnecting lore in the world just by like, okay, like the Knights Ardent, they're everywhere, and they are interwoven into different stories, and it just feels like not a living world because it's still a JRPG towns, and people are in the same place, except for as you do complete side quests, they do move from town to town. So there's that kind of evolution as you get through and complete more of the game, that things kind of change.
Absolutely, and it's really satisfying, and it is kind of funny how like I had to keep in mind always that the review crunch would color my opinions, because I was playing this game for 8-12 hours a day, trying to just get as much in as much as I can, like just trying to stay on target and get it. And I was at 45 hours when I beat the game. I currently have my play time at like 80, 85. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm about 80.
Yeah, and I was like, I think I was at 60, 65 when I finally beat all 8 stories, and it's like, jeez, the game was just huge. It really took up a lot of time, but even as I was doing it, I was like, yeah, this is totally meant for just play a chapter a night or do a little bit here and there and not really worry about making forward progress constantly, because it was so segmented. And one of the, I don't know if it was a silly thing or not, maybe in the structure that I had to play it in, going for all 8 characters right off the bat and just doing chapter 1 after chapter 1, you really did start to see the similarities between the structure, and that was really like, oh, I don't know about this game. This is a little too repetitious for my sake. And the battle system was the same way. But then when you finally got to chapter 2, you started getting those secondary jobs. It really opened up the world, and you saw a little bit more variety. And I think it just clicked for me at that point. But it was a bit of a rough start for me, and I'm so glad it was able to recover, because that doesn't usually happen with games. If it has a rough start, it usually doesn't lift itself back up.
No, you're right. Although I did hear about people who actually started with chapter 1 with certain characters and just went all the way up to 4, and I don't know how they did that.
That's
they
insane.
did it.
Good for them. But like I was thinking about doing that when I was getting the chapter 1s, and I'm like, that's a really high level. I think I'll get closer to that level if I finish all of the 8 chapter 1s first.
Exactly. That's kind of what I did. I think on the Kotaku review, Jason Schreier referred to them as level gates, so they're not really they're not really gates, because they don't stop you or anything. It's just a recommended level, and if you're not there, woe to you maybe, but you can do it if you want.
There's a certain point where you can just handle it, but it's rough.
It is quite rough, and that's actually one of the reasons I really appreciated the secondary jobs, is because when I would come up against a boss that I was having trouble with, and I'd say like, oh, okay, what's Reddit doing, what's Game FAQs doing, and like all these people will be recommending all these different builds, and even though it's frustrating, we just want a straight answer, it really goes to show the depth of the game. Yeah,
like there's a pliability to that combat system that I had a couple chapters where my party was for the most, like Hana was my main, and I couldn't change her out at all, so she was always my highest level, but I'd be bringing in, I kind of kept the other 7, tried to keep them relatively leveled until I started pushing forward at the end, but they'd all be very under-leveled, but then I'd kind of be like, okay, in this area there's a lot of enemies that are weak to this, like, they're all weak to magic, so I'll bring Cyrus around with me, and I'll make sure that my second class on someone is a mage, so that way I can just set them up to do a lot of damage. And I think that there's a lot of depth to that combat system, because you can kind of customize your party to take on almost any task, and it's relatively easy to mess around and figure that out. Like, I wish it was maybe a little easier to just switch people in and out.
Yeah.
Because you always have to go back to a pub to do that. But you could totally go challenge yourself and take on a much higher level chapter with your party, even if they're a little under-leveled, and just try to, outwit the computer and make sure you have a lot of healing potions.
I'm kind of envious of your approach to that, where you sort of evenly leveled your party. Because
Same.
I basically kept my core party members were always Haunted, Therion, and Alphen, and then the fourth party member would switch to whoever's chapter it was.
Yeah.
Because of that, my main party was like easily 20 to 25 levels higher than the secondary party, and that bit me in the end when it came to that final dungeon.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
I haven't done it myself, but I heard about it.
It's a bit rough, but actually, going back to the side quests, did you guys find them a little too obtuse?
I did, absolutely. You're right. I did have problems, and not always, but sometimes. And I would there's still lots of quests I haven't finished because someone's like telling me some random story. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do for you? I have no idea. I'm sorry. Although I do like it when I find a quest and I say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Then I go way the hell across the world and I steal from someone who I see has something that looks familiar. And I'm like, hey, I think I know where I'm supposed to take this. So I grab it off them. And I take it back to the original dude, and it's like, hey, here's $1,000 billion. So you do get rewarded really well for figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
But I did consult a guide more than once.
Probably my most satisfying one of those was I had just been in one town, talked to an old lady about, her good-for-nothing son, and then I kept coming across this one soldier. I kept talking to him, like, and I was like, why is this clicking with me? Why? Because he keeps saying, I'll show that person that I'm not good for nothing after all. And I realized, wait a second, this is the son.
Yes.
And had him come along with me so we could go back to the grandmother. And, and sure enough, that completed the quest. It was really nice.
At least, okay, I haven't found that quest yet because I know, like, the woman was like, yeah, I regret calling my son a jackass. Yeah, I bet you do.
Yep. So, and there's sweet moments like that where it really works out.
Yeah, there's a lot of sweet moments. There's also that one thing where you kind of talk to the little kid who's like, my mommy kept calling someone's name over and over at night until she screamed and I thought she was dying. I'm like, oh, that poor kid.
I posted that on Twitter and people had a field day.
Was that you who posted that? I wasn't sure who posted that.
That was
but
me.
Yeah.
And, oh boy. I saw that and I'm like, wow, they went there. Of course, there's a lot of moments where it's like, wow, they went there.
There were a few, weren't there? Like, I was a little surprised with parts of Primrose's story.
Yeah, I got through her first chapter, then right into her second chapter, and was like, oh my, they're not stopping this.
No. Okay, we're going to have a sex trafficking plot, okay?
Fun.
Yeah. Hey, Alphen, what are you up to?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Tressa, give me some some levity here.
Tressa, your mom has that, that Fargo accent.
She really does.
Make her say
I was
something.
thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah. Oh, you'll be careful out there now.
Yeah, pretty much.
I really enjoyed the side quests. Just even if they were kind of weird to find out the solutions to some of them, but those would be where the path actions would be done in more interesting ways, because a lot of the main quests are just use that character's path action to success. Mm-hmm. Whereas the side quests would be like, all right, I'm gonna have to steal this, but then I'll have to, I could use the challenge or the provoke to complete this part of the quest, and there was a lot more variety in what you could do in the side quests.
I feel like there was a lot of path actions that were just better than others.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
Stealing.
Yeah, stealing was definitely better than merchant, until you got to the really high level stuff, and I was like, you know what, I have $1 million, I'm just gonna buy it.
Yeah. That's actually how you get some of the best weapons in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Like, just townspeople are hanging on to them, and it's like, hey, I'll buy that off you.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, this whole thing, go ahead.
They're super expensive, but then as you get later on in the game, you start to have a lot more money, so it's way easier to get a lot of those weapons.
Yeah, I think I'm currently sitting at 2 million.
Jeez.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of grinding, so yeah.
Have you been using one trick I discovered a little bit late, but it was really helpful, was using bewildering dance to
It's
baby.
so much fun.
Yeah, and some get like 2 times experience, 5 times experience. Once I got 100 times experience.
See, I never got that. I was never that lucky. Like in my grinding phase to try to prepare for the final dungeon, I was using Bewildering Grace to try to get those ×2, ×5 on both job points and experience. There's bad things that happen too, like suck away all your SP, or
everybody's down to 1 hit point.
Yes,
that
insta-kill. My favorite was I've been grinding. I got 4 levels each for all of my party members, and then it did an insta-kill attack on all my party members.
Oh my god, I never got that. I'm kind of glad I haven't.
I think it's super rare, but I started saving after every level I got because I lost so much progress, and I was like, oh, I hate you, Bewildering Grace, but I need to do you in order to get decent experience.
There is a magic to just queuing up 4 Bewildering Graces in one go and just rolling the dice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It'd be a good way to grind, and it would also be just a good way to kind of mess with things. And I feel like a lot of the abilities in general that the different kind of, I feel like every character has some sort of trolling ability, or at least something kind of novel. Like I liked Hired Help a lot.
Yes.
That was just kind of it would be a fun, not necessarily a win button, but it's just that like, all right, I've had enough of these enemies. Let's just throw down a lot of money, and Tress is gonna lay them all down.
Yeah, because I think you can hire the veteran soldiers, something like that, and 3 of them just come out and just destroy everything in your path.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Hi, Kitty.
The game is structured pretty well, and again, that battle system did become a lot of fun. Like as you got farther and got the better jobs, or figured out the best way to combine the jobs, and I felt like some of the bosses had a little too much HP though. They were definitely spongy.
Yeah, definitely. I was having some trouble with the bosses until I really kind of did so much grinding that I went way above my level, and then it wasn't a problem anymore. But I actually had one of the hardest bosses I found was actually the first boss I took on as Ophelia. I didn't really know how to use the guide thing properly, so I went in with a real lame ass and I died, and that was the boss where this golem had like these 2 subordinates who would explode and kill you instantly, and that was a tough fight for that early in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also those chapter 1 things are always so weird, because you could be going in there with a relatively stocked party, or it could just be that person by themselves. Like I pity the person who picks one of the weaker, like if you started with Ophelia or I mean, I guess Primrose isn't as weak as some of the other characters, but like I went in with Hanet as my first character, so soloing a boss with her was relatively easy because she could do some damage, but some of the other characters are a lot more support roles, so them trying to do a lot of damage by themselves is a lot harder.
Yeah, it is, and that's where you have to get kind of clever with their abilities, but if you don't really know exactly what you're doing, you're probably going to die. Whereas Hanet has, the snow leopard that can kind of carry you through a lot of battles until about midway through the game.
I love that snow leopard.
So cute.
That was another ability I adored, was Hanet's being able to capture enemies. Like, that was just a lot of fun, because it's that percentage chance of maybe you'll get it. I got a couple 20%s just kind of gambling on it, and landed those, and I felt very good, because they would usually be very powerful enemies as well.
Yes.
And having that when it lines up where you can just do like a triple attack to every enemy with one of the guys that you captured, and I like the stuff like that. But then there are some characters, like I feel like Ulberich. I like his story, and he can be very useful in battle, but he didn't have as much of the kind of weirdness as some of the other abilities had.
Yeah, he is very straightforward.
Yeah, he's not quite as versatile. Although the warrior, he has the best support skill in the game. The breaking 999 damage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That is necessity to have on at least 2 of your characters before you, like, even by the time you're taking on the bosses that guard the extra jobs. It is ridiculous, like, especially because I got it attached to Hanet. I got her the War Master job and buffed up her strength like crazy, and if I like lowered enemy defense with Therion, I could easily do 20,000 damage a hit.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, those fights for the secondary jobs, those could be...
They don't mess around.
No, they don't mess around, and especially that War Master boss. I actually haven't gotten that job yet because that War Master boss has a final desperation attack that just clobbers you if you're not ready for it. And you could be like in the red. You have her in the red, and then she just wipes you out. And I got so mad.
Yeah.
Screw this.
I had trouble with that, and I eventually got it, but there's also a way to just break that boss in half. One of the other side jobs, and I'm blanking on which one it is at the moment, but they allow you to use one of your abilities on all of the characters. So,
yes.
So you put that on Tressa, who has the sidestep ability, and will dodge, and she'll have all the characters dodge every single physical attack. You stack that up, have everybody have 4 dodges. War Master won't hit you. Like, just keep that up and keep that going. Tressa will destroy the War Master.
That's what I love about this battle system, is that there's so and we have been kind of touching on it a little bit, but we haven't really touched that fully on all the support skills, which so you have your 2 or 3 jobs, and when you switch them out, you don't have access to any of their abilities except for the support skills, which you can mix and match as you unlock them, and they're relatively easy to get. Like, if you just want to get a bunch of the lower level support skills and characters, it's not that hard, but then you realize there's ones that are good to use on everyone, and it kind of just gives you all these options that you can do in battle by giving them these different abilities.
Yeah, I find that the Saving Grace, which lets you heal above your hit point total, that became vital when you were fighting those super bosses.
I did not use that one. I probably should have, but I liked so many of my other abilities that I didn't want to get rid of anything.
Yeah, it's hard to choose.
So that problem of choice was a big thing, because like for Haunted for example, I had Patience and Second Chance or something like that, where
those are great.
She'll get like a second turn like at the end every so often, or just hit twice, which is super nice. So at that point I didn't want to get rid of anything else because she's just so powerful, but it would have been great to be able to heal above her max HP.
Yeah, Patience and the other skill that you mentioned, Second Serving, those were like absolute musts on most of my characters because it makes battles go so much faster.
But then you do that, and you don't have that versatility of what each character has, and you're just like, well, crap, I've used up 3 slots already. What do I use for this 4th one? And you don't want everybody to be exactly the same, but it also almost kind of works out. And it's really hard to choose when you only have 4 slots and so many support skills.
That was what made me realize, okay, this game, the battle system is not everything it seems. It's really much deeper than like it lets on at first.
I feel like it very kind of gently lays everything out, but it might be a little too on the slow side in showing all its secrets, because I think once you get to the support skills and the secondary jobs, that's when it starts to open up and show its beauty.
Yeah, exactly, like a flower.
Yeah.
And I was very late, or quite late anyway, to discover these secondary skills, because they don't tell you, hey, look for these secondary skills. They're just kind of there, you know what I mean? You have to find them on the map and say, what's that interesting marking on the map? And you go for it and you find out what it is. And there's no fanfare or anything. There's no like crystals descending or anything. They just say, hey, here's a job. Okay, go for it. See ya.
Yeah, I stumbled upon one by accident, and then I think I stumbled upon my second one and realized, I'm like, okay, there's probably one for each of the main jobs. And it's probably one in each of these areas. So then I just got to a point when I think it was near the end of chapter 2 where I was like, I'm gonna find all these right now. And then I got them all, and then it kind of blew my mind a little bit when, as you get to, I think it's areas that I guess you could go to them at any point, but the level cap is pretty high. But like the areas between like chapter 3 and 4, or as you do the chapter 4s, that's when you stumble upon the last couple jobs that aren't duplicates of what characters already are, which add even more to the battle system and the combat.
Yeah, and then that fun surprise is like, oh yeah, I have to beat a boss before doing this, and they are way harder than anything I've fought in the main game.
Yeah, I walk in thinking I'm going to get a free skill, and then they're like, you got to beat me first. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, well, get the hell out of here, coward.
It's something else. Now, I feel like actually, there is one thing before we dive into the final dungeon, because I do want to end on that. The music in this game is freaking gorgeous.
So good. It is so good.
It's one of my favorite soundtracks, probably of all time. Like, I'll see where I'm at in a year before I totally make that distinction. But like, I've been listening to it just like while working, and just it's got this nice serenity to it, and like Frostlands is probably my favorite
that's gorgeous.
from it. And it's a really pretty, beautiful soundtrack, and the leitmotifs for each character are very distinct and evocative of the characters. and it makes exploring this world just like kind of arresting in moments, especially with all the sheen and the nice nostalgic nature of the graphics too.
Yeah, and that's one thing I was mentioning earlier is how the final chapters for, say, Primrose and I think Ophelia have that kind of very creepy ending with you go to these towns where everyone's not acting right and the sky is kind of this blood red and you have that very foreboding sound. It was very, very Stephen King-ish in a way. If you've ever read Pet Sematary, it reminded me a bit of that.
It's very Castle Rock.
Yes.
I was like almost expecting all of them to be like that, and then you get to Tressa's, and it's nope, still happy. It's like,
yeah. But
Tressa's
that's
happy all the way
Tressa.
through.
Yeah, that's Tressa. Tressa's just like, I'm gonna sell some stuff. It's gonna be great.
And she does.
I like Tressa. Yeah.
no,
That's
Tressa's a fun character.
Yeah, Tressa's story is exactly what it sets out to be. It's like, I'm gonna go sell some stuff, and then she sells some stuff, and then she comes home. Like, that's...
Hooray, capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I will say, well, Oberic was probably my least favorite story because it felt a little standard. There were moments in there that I was surprised the way it went, especially when he did confront his old friend and what happened
that was
from
really
that.
Cool.
That was a hard battle.
Yeah, and that was unexpected. That caught me by surprise the first time I went in, and that's probably maybe one of the few moments of Ulbricht's story that like is really kind of stand out to me.
Yeah.
Although I did like the area where you're like going through that like the Colosseum thing.
Oh yeah,
that
was
was
kind
of neat
fun.
with
that
him.
changed things
But-
up. Yeah.
Yeah, like but Ulbricht's overall story. Well, I think Ulbricht's chapters might have had some more variety than other ones. His overall story was a little lacking, but I did like that moment with his old pal.
One thing I do like about Ulbrich is even though his story was a little bit standard, his voice actor just took it to the max.
Yes.
He actually has... I gave him the dancer skill, and he's the only one I
did
know
too.
of.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice. I did
and
not.
he doesn't. When he does the lion dance, he doesn't just say lion dance. He says, "Let the lion dance," like this real heroic sort of bellow. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
I love Ulbrich for that reason alone.
I do think the voice acting across the board is really good.
It is.
Yeah.
Like they sell these characters, and God bless the Haunted voice actor because reading this old English and getting this stuff, like I'm reading it the first time, and I'm like, what the hell? This is
Yeah. You get used to it.
Yeah,
but
you
yeah.
do.
Yeah, a lot of people like that Haunted accent is super Dragon Questy.
Very.
But I remember I still talk to people who play the game. They're like, I can't stand it. But I lived in a world where I played through most of this game while I was on my couple weeks of paternity leave after my baby was born. So when I was playing as Haunted, I would read that aloud to my kid. So it would get him to stop crying, and I would be like,
he's focusing like
reading,
what?
Yeah, he'd be like, what are you? I don't understand it. What
is this
accent
crazy
is
stuff?
that? Yeah, where are you?
I left the
from?
room for this.
But like, it's also saying that stuff out loud yourself kind of brings out the absurdity of it all, which I don't think really comes through even when you're hearing it or reading it, because when you read it, it's just kind of obnoxious, but saying it aloud it's really funny.
Yeah, I got used to it. At first, I was like, oh god, I have a headache. But after a while, you kind of expect it from her, and I had no problem by the end.
Yeah, I appreciated the idea that each of these characters had their own dialect. Really.
Yeah, they did.
Let's get to that final dungeon. I'm curious because I've only seen your tweets kind of being like, what the hell?
Oh yeah, I this game made me lose it, and I'm gonna put up a spoiler warning for those of you who have not reached the final dungeon. So, have you guys unlocked the final dungeon yet?
I've
No.
heard the process that you have to do
Same.
it, but I've been kind of taking my time getting there because I don't really feel a time crunch with it, and I'm enjoying playing the side quests at my leisure before I get to the final dungeon.
Yeah, I think I'm going to at least try to get those last jobs before I kill myself.
You need to. Those jobs
Yeah, I
are
figured.
necessary, absolutely, because the final boss makes those other bosses look like chumps.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And if I'm not mistaken, people say, oh, there's no common thread in Octopath Traveler, but there absolutely is. And
There
you can see
is.
that with Cyrus's story in particular. And I'm guessing the character who was mentioned in Cyrus's story and in Ophelia's story is probably what comes to fruition in the last chapter, is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of they'll mention certain things or a certain place, and yeah, that's where it ends up being.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm remembering now, Cyrus's ending. He's looking at the mural, and he's like, "I'll translate this mural," and it's literally the word death over and over and over again. And I'm like, that is creepy as hell.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and fittingly so. So yeah, the thing is, unlocking this final dungeon, unless you're just going for completion on all of the side quests, you wouldn't find this naturally. It's like, I don't think any of us in the review phase, if we had been able to finish the game, because you do need to complete all 8 characters first, would have found it or even realized it was there, because you have to do 2 very specific side quest lines that make sense once you do them, like why you have to do those, but there's no indication that, hey, maybe you should do this one. Maybe this should get done. It's just a sort of natural thing that you have to do. And once you do unlock it and get to this final dungeon, it's like you cannot walk there naturally. You can only teleport there, use the fast travel. And it's kind of freaky because there's no random encounters there whatsoever. Which honestly, at first was like, oh, that's awesome. And then in retrospect, it's like, this sucks. I want higher level enemies so I can grind. And because the highest level enemies I could find to grind were 55. And they did not give me enough and even like that's when I started learning about bewildering grace and all the fun of that. So you get to this final dungeon, you see how the side quests lead into this final dungeon, and then basically it's not even really a dungeon in the way the others are. It's honestly a Mega Man boss rush.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So you have to defeat 8 of the previous bosses from the game, one from each of the chapters. Not necessarily the final chapter, but one of their bosses. And after you can beat them, there will be a little plaque that you can read, and that'll show you how this character's story ties into all the others, as far as like this element of it. Not necessarily their goal, but maybe the people they came across.
Right.
And it does provide this sense of like, oh, this is how it's all connected, and the thorough line. So you defeat those 8 bosses, and then you open up the way to the final boss. And it's a freaking nightmare. The design is really cool. The music is amazing. It is so freaking good.
That was the tease that there was even some kind of secret dungeon for me, is that I stumbled upon like a listing for the soundtrack, and there was a thing that was like the final battle, and I'm like, this is really cool music. Where is it in the game? And then that's when people started kind of uncovering it. I think it was basically, I think there might have been some reviewers that stumbled upon it like when the game came out.
Right.
Like, I know at embargo, people were like, yes, there is something, we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
I think people discovered it because of a Japanese strategy guide.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's how it was first discovered. Basically, this boss, well, you see later on how they mess with the guard system as time goes on, where certain bosses will change what they're weak against, or you have to defeat these other things in order to get to it. Yeah, the boss does that. It throws debilitating spells at you. It hits all the party members. It hits hard. And the first one you take out, and you can maybe try to start hitting it now, but it could resurrect to these 2 other protrusions that will attack you, and then you have to defeat those 2. And I found in my first playthrough against those guys, you have to defeat both of them at the same time in order to actually get rid of them, because otherwise they'll resurrect each other. And so that was a fun little discovery. But then it also throws status effects at you and all this stuff. And right beforehand, there's a thing that comes up before this final boss. It's like, make your party, and it's like it has a primary party and a secondary party. I'm like, okay, well, I'm guessing this is like a Final Fantasy VIII thing. If a character dies, another one comes in. But I feel confident with my party. I think I can do this. No, I got my butt kicked with my main party, so I did a bunch of side quests, used all my nuts on my main 4 characters, and eventually did beat this boss. First phase. Because then I found out that there's a second phase, and it uses the secondary party. So all of my
asses.
Exactly. I have no option to use those my 4 really powerful members for that second part. It has to be the other 4. So you have to use all 8 characters, which is why you need to level up all your characters evenly. And yeah. So they got destroyed immediately. And so I spent hours grinding these guys up to get up to the equal level to be able to try to take out the first phase so I could get my main party after the second phase. I couldn't do it. I could never get them because I used all my nuts on that one party. I couldn't do it. If I could use that one party against both phases, I could totally destroy them. Cannot do it, and I'm just too frustrated.
Is there even like a story reason why they give you what you have to use your secondary party?
Nope. It's just all 8 of us coming together.
Screw with you.
Yep, pretty much. Screw with you, all 8 characters working, and that's about it. So I got that Twitter rant, which I was trying it again, because here's the thing: you can't save before this boss. You have to save before you take on those 8 other bosses.
What? Wow!
So you have to do that boss rush every time.
And I take it wouldn't save any kind of level ups that you have.
Exactly. So you lose nothing. Yeah, you can't.
That's kind of obnoxious.
Exactly.
That's a little bit obnoxious.
It is really obnoxious, and I changed up my party makeup. I tried to put some of my main party in the other side to try to even it out, and nothing worked. The combination I had for my main party was perfect, but I couldn't. I wanted that for my second phase, and it just wasn't enough, and I lost it. I haven't been so frustrated at a game in such a long time, especially, and then I got even more mad because I looked up what you get for defeating this boss, and it's literally here's a little wrap up, thank you for helping me, and then a little quote at the end is about how traveling is so nice and so worth it, and always keep traveling, always keep meeting people, and then you just okay, quest over, that's it. I'm like,
and then you meet Satan and you die.
Yeah, exactly. You get tons of experience, tons of cash, and you get an accessory that prevents all enemy encounters, but that's it. And it's so not worth it to me.
Why would you want that then?
Exactly.
You're done with the game?
What are you going to do with it?
Exactly. It is.
Look at the scenery.
Yeah, well, it's pretty, I guess.
Yeah.
It's so not worth it. I totally recommend getting to that point and reading about the connections and try out the boss. From what I understand, level 75 is about what you'll want to be at in order to actually beat it. All my I had Haunted at 75 and everybody else at around 65.
Right.
Yeah, I was not taking the time to get that up.
No, that's a bit much. I don't really see any good reason to make the boss that hard if it's actually part of the story, which, as you tell me, it kind of is. So if you wanted to give me a separate super boss that was stupid as hell like that, sure, why not?
Yeah, it kind of is, but it's also kind of, I mean, again, you can defeat these 8 previous bosses, get those connections, and then honestly, you don't need to actually defeat this boss other than just bragging rights.
I'm probably going to stop there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I want to get to that dungeon and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, take on the boss so you can hear the music because it's so good.
Yeah.
But get destroyed and then you'll be done.
And then watch a YouTube video. And be like, okay,
exactly.
That's the ending.
Exactly.
God bless YouTube.
Yeah.
I do really hope that, I mean, it seems like Octopath Traveler is selling very well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see this style be iterated on. Because I think there's a lot of potential in making it even better than this first game by maybe not having that kind of asinine final boss thing to tie it all together. Mm-hmm. Maybe actually have it cohesive through the story. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see this kind of style used. It's not just another sprite-based RPG. It is something completely separate. I would actually love to see something more in the style of 32-bit era RPGs, like the really complex sprite work we got with Suikoden and Breath of Fire 3.
Mm-hmm. That'd be awesome.
Something
really
like
cool.
that.
There's so much potential with this engine, and the water effects in this game are some of the best I've ever seen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, seriously, 10 out of 10, great water.
Yeah, thank you, Unreal Engine.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. There's that Unreal Engine working for you.
But yeah, I'd like to. It's sold out in Japan. I've heard that. They're apologizing.
Yeah, and over at US Gamer, Katie was saying her partner tried to pick up the game and had to go everywhere to find it, to find a hard copy. So it is doing quite well on both sides of the ocean.
Yeah, that's good to see. Hey, what do you know, Square? People actually want traditional RPGs. Now, let's hope Dragon Quest XI sells well.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that.
Yeah.
Please, buy Dragon Quest XI. I love Dragon Quest.
Yep, but overall, I stand by my review. I think I nailed
Same
it.
here.
I do like it a lot, but there's
Same.
enough issues that I wasn't able to quite love it, but it's still a really good game and highly recommended.
It is very, very good. If you are into RPGs and if you're into, especially if you're into like the Bravely Default series and you have a Switch, it's an easy recommendation.
It's a perfect side game too, something to play occasionally over time, and you'll still get enjoyment out of it and see how these characters
Yeah,
go.
it's very easy to pick up and resume from where you left off,
Yeah.
which is not something you say about every RPG.
No.
Yeah, it's a perfect Switch game, really.
Yeah, really is. So they leaned into that handheld aspect, which I did not expect, and I think it works for it. It feels very unique, and that's really cool. All right. Well, I think that covers it for our Octopath Traveler discussion. So thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And Neal, where can we find you at?
You can find me at NintendoWorldReport.com, where and Nintendo World Report TV, which is also on the YouTubes, and I'm on Twitter at NRON10.
Very nice. And what about you, Nadia?
I am on US Gamer, that's usgamer.net, and I am also on Twitter at Nadia Oxford, that's all one word, and I actually do an RPG podcast with Kat Bailey. It's called Axe of the Blood God, and we do it every week, and you should listen to it.
I was on there talking about Octopath initially, back when,
That's right.
before I completed everything.
Yeah, so listen to that episode. That was a fun episode. That was fun to have you on the show.
Yeah, it was a really good time. So, yeah. Make sure to check both of them out, and of course, make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on the Switch and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Bye.